Have you ever wondered why some people can walk into a room and immediately feel like they shouldn't be messed with? It's not arrogance, it's not aggression, it's something much more subtle and powerful. They've built a mind completely impervious to manipulation, intimidation, or emotional attacks. It's as if they have an invisible aura that whispers, "I'm untouchable," without ever needing to prove it through confrontation. Here's the truth few will tell you. Most people live with their minds completely unprotected, like a house with every door open, inviting anyone to enter and wreak emotional havoc. They react to every provocation, defend themselves against every criticism, justify themselves for every question. It's exhausting, and even worse, it communicates weakness to any trained observer. Meanwhile, individuals with truly armored minds operate on a completely different frequency. They don't ignore attacks, they render them irrelevant. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how to build 5 layers of psychological protection that turn your mind into an impenetrable fortress. You'll learn how to shut down emotions in 10 seconds when necessary, how to reflect negative energy back at the sender, and how to use intimidation attempts to fuel your own strength. But most importantly, you'll discover how to be completely transparent and honest while remaining impossible to manipulate. Prepare to develop the kind of mental presence that makes people think twice about playing mind games with you. An armored mind isn't built with a single giant wall that can be breached by a well-aimed attack. It's engineered with 5 independent layers of protection that make emotional invasion virtually impossible. Have you ever noticed how some people seem impervious to provocation, criticism, or attempts at manipulation, as if they had an invisible force field around their psyche? They weren't born that way. They systematically built what military psychologists call layered cognitive resistance. It's like having a home security system where even if someone gets past the first barrier, there are still 4 other lines of defense waiting. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and creator of logotherapy, discovered that the human mind can become literally invincible when it develops internal protective structures that function regardless of external circumstances. The first wall is the separation between facts and interpretations. You learn to distinguish between what really happened and the stories your mind tells about what happened. The second is the relevance filter. Not every opinion deserves emotional processing. The third is the anchoring in values. Attacks that don't touch your core values simply bounce off. The fourth is the temporal detachment. You understand that difficult times are temporary and do not define your identity. The fifth wall is the emotional sovereignty. You become the only one authorized to determine how you feel about any situation. When these 5 walls are functioning simultaneously, something remarkable happens. You can be in the midst of an emotional storm and remain completely calm in the center, not because you're suppressing feelings, but because you've developed a natural immunity to external toxicity. Mastering this mental fortitude reveals itself when you realize you can consciously choose which external stimuli are allowed to affect your internal state. It's like having remote control over your own emotions. Imagine being able to listen to destructive criticism and literally feel nothing but intellectual curiosity about the person's motivation. It's not insensitivity, it's intelligent emotional discrimination. You develop the ability to process information without absorbing the emotional charge it brings, like a scientist studying a virus without becoming infected. This skill transforms you into a force of nature in any conflictual environment because people realize their attempts at destabilization simply don't work. But having this fortitude is only the first step. Now you need to learn something even more powerful. Calculated coolness is the most intimidating skill a mind can develop. It's not the absence of emotions, it's absolute control over when and how they manifest. Have you ever witnessed those moments when someone can go from emotionally engaged to completely analytical in a matter of seconds, as if they had an internal switch that controls their emotional access to problems? It's not psychopathy or unhealthy coolness. It's emotional engineering apply to situations that demand maximum clarity. Daniel Goleman, in Emotional Intelligence, documents how elite professionals, surgeons, hostage negotiators, fighter pilots, develop this ability to compartmentalize emotions when the situation demands pure rationality. It's like having two operating modes, a compassionate human for personal relationships and an analytical machine for problem solving that cannot be tainted by emotional interference. The method works through what neuroscientists call top-down cognitive regulation. You literally hack the emotional process before it takes control of your behavior. The 10-second technique involves 3 phases: recognition, identify the emotional trigger in the first 2 seconds; insulation, mentally put the emotion in a separate box for 3 seconds; and analytical reframe. Reframe the situation as a problem to be solved in the last 5 seconds. It's not about suppressing feelings. It's about strategically postponing them until you've dealt with the situation optimally. It's the difference between being controlled by emotions and using emotions as input for decision-making. When you master this, you develop something frighteningly powerful: the ability to function at peak efficiency precisely when others panic or emotionally paralyze. Mastering calculated coolness happens when you can consciously switch between emotional modes, like a pilot switching between autopilot and manual control based on the needs of the situation. In an important discussion, you can shift from empathetic and understanding to analytical and direct as the dynamic demands. In a crisis, you can tune out anxiety and fear to focus exclusively on practical solutions. It's not dehumanization, it's contextual optimization. You use the right emotional tool for each situation. This skill creates a natural intimidation effect because people realize you can't be emotionally destabilized, that you always have access to your maximum analytical capacity regardless of external pressure. You become predictable in your unpredictability, always calm, always calculating, always in control. But this calculated coolness needs to be complemented by an even more sophisticated technique. The black mirror is the supreme art of psychological defense, turning emotional attacks into self-sabotage for the one launching them, without having to stoop to the level of aggression. Have you ever noticed how some people can make toxic individuals feel uncomfortable in their very presence, without ever raising their voice or directly retaliating? They have developed something that seems almost supernatural: the ability to absorb negative energy, process it internally, and return it in a way that exposes the sender's toxicity. It's like having a shield that not only blocks attacks, but reflects them back with interest. Carl Jung called this non-identification. You become a neutral observer of the emotional dynamics rather than a participant. And from this elevated position, you can reflect reality back to the person in a way they can't deny or rationalize. The technique works through 3 fundamental principles: absorption without identification. You receive the negative energy but do not identify with it. Neutral processing. You analyze the motivation behind the attack without emotional judgment. And strategic reflection. You return the energy in a way that forces self-confrontation. For example, when someone attacks you with sarcasm, instead of retaliating or defending yourself, you simply reflect. Interesting how you choose to communicate your frustrations. It's not passive-aggressive. It's clinical observation that forces the person to look at their own behavior. It's like being a psychologist who never loses professional composure. You're always observing patterns, never getting drawn into the drama. This creates a disturbing effect for toxic people because they rely on emotional reactions to maintain their power games. Black Mirror Mastery manifests when you become so emotionally transparent that people literally see their own motivations reflected in your presence. You stop being a target and become a mirror. And most people don't like what they see when they look at themselves through someone who can't be manipulated. It's not about being cold or superior. It's about maintaining enough emotional clarity to function as a detector of human authenticity. Genuine people feel comfortable in your presence because there's no judgment, only observation. Toxic people feel uncomfortable because their manipulative tactics become obvious when reflected back. You develop an intimidating aura, not through aggression, but through sheer emotional transparency that exposes the shadows in others. But this capacity for reflection needs to be balanced with an even more advanced strategy. Reverse pressure is the mental alchemy that transforms attempts at intimidation into fuel for your own strength. It's like having a psychological immune system that strengthens with each attack. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to become calmer and more focused precisely when others try to pressure or intimidate them? They've developed something that seems contradictory but is profoundly effective: the ability to use external hostility as a catalyst for internal clarity. It's the same principle that makes muscles grow stronger when faced with resistance. Your mind can be trained to interpret pressure as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to be avoided. Nassim Taleb calls this anti-fragility. Systems that not only resist stress, but improve because they've been stressed. It's the difference between breaking under pressure and using pressure as fuel for superior performance. The system works through a three-step process that reprograms your neurological response to bullying. Acknowledgement of the attempt: you consciously identify when someone is trying to pressure you. Energy reframing: you interpret the pressure as evidence that you are on the right track. And focus amplification: you use the energy of intimidation to increase your resolve. It's fascinating how this works in practice. When someone tries to intimidate you, instead of feeling fear or anger, you feel a kind of gratitude for the opportunity to test and strengthen your resolve. It's like a martial artist who thanks their strongest training partners because they accelerate their development. You literally begin to see intimidation attempts as gifts in disguise. Someone is offering you free energy to become even more resilient. Reverse pressure mastery happens when you develop the ability to remain not only unfazed under pressure, but genuinely energized by it. Intimidating people rely on creating anxiety and self-doubt in their targets. But when you use these attempts to fuel clarity and determination, you literally break the mechanism they use to exert power. It's like being an emotional solar power plant that converts negative energy directed at you into personal power. You develop a presence that silently communicates: the more you try to push me, the stronger I become. This creates a reverse intimidation effect, where people perceive that their attempts at domination are actually strengthening you, which leaves them confused and less likely to keep trying. But this resistance to external pressure needs to be complemented by an even more sophisticated quality. Opaque transparency is the most elegant paradox of human communication. You reveal everything about your thoughts and feelings, but in a way that makes it impossible for others to use that information against you. Have you ever met people who speak openly about their vulnerabilities, fears, and limitations, yet somehow seem invulnerable to manipulation? They have mastered the art of being radically honest about internal facts without creating attack points for emotional predators. It's like being an open book, written in a language only genuine people can read. Manipulators see the words, but can't decode the meaning in a way useful to their agendas. Brené Brown, a vulnerability expert, has discovered that there is a crucial difference between strategic vulnerability, which builds authentic connections, and unguarded oversharing, which invites exploitation. The technique works through three simultaneous principles that create this crystal armor: factual honesty without emotional charge. You share real information, but not the emotional energy that normally accompanies it. Controlled context, you choose when and how to reveal personal aspects based on the quality of the relationship, and detachment from results. You share without needing validation or specific reactions. For example, you can calmly say, "I have insecurities about my physical appearance." Without sounding needy or fishing for compliments, it's simply a fact about your human experience, shared with the same neutrality as saying, "I have brown eyes." This approach disorients manipulators because they rely on finding raw emotional wounds, but you present your wounds as scars that have already been processed and integrated. The mastery of opaque transparency reveals itself when you become simultaneously the most honest and the most unreadable, a combination that intimidates through sheer authenticity. You can discuss your flaws, fears, and failures as calmly as you discuss the weather, which creates a fascinating dynamic. Genuine people feel deeply connected to your authenticity, while manipulators feel frustrated by the lack of emotional hooks to exploit. You develop a presence that communicates, "I have nothing to hide and I don't need anything from you," which is simultaneously attractive to healthy people and repulsive to toxic ones. It's like having a natural detector of human intentions. Your transparency forces others to reveal their true motivations, because there are no games or masks to hide behind. You become intimidating not through aggression or coldness, but through an honesty so complete that it exposes anyone who approaches with a hidden agenda. Now you have the complete blueprint for building an intimidating mind through sheer psychological invulnerability. But here's the question that will determine whether this transforms your life or just becomes more theoretical knowledge. Do you have enough mental discipline to implement these 5 layers of protection when you're truly tested? Because it's easy to talk about mental fortitude when you're calm, but true armor is tested in the moments when others try to shatter your serenity. Think about the next conflict situation, destructive criticism, or intimidation attempt you face. Now, imagine how different it would be if, instead of reacting emotionally or defending yourself, you simply activated your 5 layers of protection and watched the situation unfold without being able to harm you. What opportunities would arise if you never again had to waste mental energy managing emotional attacks? What level of respect would you command if people realized you were literally unshakable? The difference between having an armored mind and a vulnerable mind isn't a matter of personality. It's a matter of conscious mental architecture. Remember, a truly armored mind doesn't attack. It simply can't be attacked. Use this power wisely, not to dominate others, but to free yourself from the need to react to the emotional games that drain most people's energy. If this content resonated with your need for mental autonomy, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.